Hey guys, you can now support this show and make your life 50% better by going to patreon.com/The System Is Down and signing up for the Downers Club, where you're going to get access to a plethora of wild, crazy, and often offensive bonus audio and video episodes of the show on a weekly basis. For more information, just go to patreon.com/The System Is Down. The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net. Today's episode is sponsored by the 29 Toes podcast. If at any point during this episode you find yourself a little too uncomfortable and triggered, you can head over to 29toes.com and kind of decompress your brain a little bit, where they're just having casual, laid-back, fun, funny conversations about things that are going on in their lives, in the world, things in media and entertainment, all that fun stuff. So check them out at 29toes.com or wherever podcasts are sold.
Welcome to the System Is Down.
What's up, Downers? Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. You know the name, you know the place. The System Is Down, the place where we have all the uncomfortable conversations about things like conspiracies, politics, and religion. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope you stick around. I hope you enjoy your stay. I hope you find this show to be a cozy way to commute to your place of employment on this beautiful Monday morning. I hope it starts your week out in a wonderful way that becomes infectious to all those around you. No guarantees, but maybe, just maybe. Today's episode is the continuation of my conversation with my cousin, Trenton Campbell, which the first episode premiered last Monday, so please go check that out if you haven't already. Listen to that before this, because we're jumping straight back into the middle of the conversation, and it's not going to make a whole lot of sense if you don't know what's going on. So you can check out the first episode either in this stream here, wherever you're listening to this, that episode's there too, or you can just go to YouTube or tsidpod.com, all the places, and check out the part 1 to this conversation. I don't need to preface it too much because I feel like the last episode prefaced it pretty dang well. So you know what's going on here. But yeah, we're going to jump straight back into the middle of it. But before we do, I got to briefly remind you guys, if you're not already a member of the Downers Club and you like the show and you'd like to support it, you can do that. You can do that with money at patreon.com/The System Is Down. And that is the place where you can get a whole slew of bonus audio and video content every single week. We put out 2, sometimes 3 episodes of the show every week, and we have a whole lot of fun with it. So go check that out. It gets even less comfortable, even more offensive than what we're doing here. But check that out. Help the show grow. I appreciate y'all. Patreon.com/The System Is Down. All right, let's just jump straight into this. This is the continuation of my conversation with Trenton Campbell. Let's get weird. So I'm back with Trenton Campbell. Trenton, do you go by Trenton or Trent? Because I see down at the bottom of the screen that it's Trent, and I'm not Danny anymore, so who knows?
Funny story behind that. I worked at Walmart for 5 years, and I went by Trenton.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Jimmy John's briefly. We'll skip past that. But now that I'm at Target, I've got a
freaky fast quitting.
Yes. Freaky fast quitting. Now that I'm at Target, I'm like, I got to change something up. So I made sure my name badge said Trent.
Okay.
Simply because it's easier to tell guests. When a guest who's ranting about their car seat that costed $2 more than the ticketed price, and try to give them a $15 gift card, and they explain to you how insensitive you are. It's easier
normal life stuff.
Tell them to call corporate and say your name is Trent than is Trent.
Yeah. I mean, as a child, I was called Danny, and then when I went into public school, they were like, "Do you want to be called Danny or Daniel?" And I'm like, "Let's switch some shit up around here." Yep. And I went by Daniel after that until I got into employment, and they're like, "Do you go by Daniel or Dan?" And I'm like, "Daniel." "Okay, Dan, it's nice to have you here." Like 5 jobs in a row, insisted on calling me Dan, to the point where I'm like, "Fuck it, I'm Dan." And it's way easier to introduce yourself with a 1-syllable name anyway.
You're exactly right. And I think the funniest part is when I was in 2nd grade, a teacher asked me if I'd rather be called Trent or Trenton.
Yeah.
And I told them Trent, and my mother called the principal and the teacher and proceeded
dare
to
you.
tell them that unacceptable. She named me Trenton for a reason, even though my dad's name is Douglas and goes by Doug.
Right.
But that's
it's not your Christian birth name, man. You gotta go with the whole thing.
But
yep. Anyway, during the break, we dug into some off-the-record stuff about our grandmother's passing that you guys don't need to hear. It's whatever. But we started to dig into some things that I think is more interesting and is fair game for on the record. And it's kind of slipped my mind since we've diverted. But do you remember what we were talking about at the end of that?
Well, it was just in terms of connection, like thinking about death and death in general, who you would feel more connected to at the funeral. On the record specifically, didn't feel a huge connection with my grandma. I felt more of a connection with, as you put it, the empathy towards family members' feelings had towards my grandma.
Right.
I think that's really important to understand when you're going through the grieving process, because if you don't understand why you're sad, you aren't helping yourself.
Right.
So I briefly mentioned that, like, I remember calling my mother that evening and breaking down in tears, specifically because I felt bad for her. I couldn't imagine losing my mother, and that the idea of that broke me down in tears simply because of empathy. Like, you know, that's kind of what we touched on a little bit.
Yeah, it's a confusing situation because you were saying that you didn't have any, like, this was your first like major death in the family, and it was basically the same for me other than Kayla's grandpa. And it's like, this is somebody that I love. I mean, she's a part of the family, but we didn't have like a huge connection with her. They were a little bit, I mean,
there were some walls. There
were definitely walls, and I could go down the trail of blaming it on the religion personally. People in the very fundamentalist mindset are afraid to let their faults show. So they're afraid to let a whole lot of things, like much of anything, show, because they're afraid of, I guess, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but it seems like it's like afraid of being honest, because if you're honest, then you might have to realize that you're just as shitty as everybody else is.
It's funny because grandma wouldn't even let anyone help grandpa shower. Like, that's how tradition was. Like, it's absurd to me. Someone's 80 plus years old, they're going to need help showering if they can't walk.
I've not heard that.
Yeah.
How does she feel now about it? I wonder.
Yeah, exactly. now Kent and my father and several other people have been helping him get dressed and all sorts of things because he needs it. He can't physically walk.
Right.
He was so traditionalist that she wouldn't let anyone see her.
So she wouldn't even let other males help him? Seems
that way.
Okay.
Yeah, they've made a lot of changes around the house, specifically that, and they now have Wi-Fi over
there. Okay, yeah. I mean, if you want people to go over and help take care of him, you're going to have Wi-Fi. It's 2018, I'm sorry.
Violet does not have great AT&T reception, so I'm going to help out. I'm going to make sure someone can connect.
Exactly. Yeah, you were saying... I don't want to put words in your mouth, but during the break you were saying something to the effect of, like, you and I haven't been close in any capacity. We were completely disconnected. Even, I would say, even before, like, the breakup of the church, even when we were there, it was like walls everywhere. And afterwards, it's like not only walls, but you kind of assume that that person is the same as they were, and they're in that same mentality. So it's just kind of like, I'm going to stay away from that.
When I was in 8th grade, I was an annoying little prick. Like I was.
It's true. It's true.
All I cared about was Star Wars. Like, there was no substance to anything I had to say.
Hey, don't bring Star Wars into your douchebaggery, okay? It's not Star Wars' fault.
Star Wars is amazing, other than Episode 8. But we'll.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Worst Star Wars episode. I would say it's the second worst Star Wars episode.
I feel like that's bonus episode number 2, but. Stay on target.
Okay.
Stay on target.
But you're right. You just assume this person's the same person. I thought you were still the Daniel I knew who was into Christian metalcore, and that's all fine and dandy. Devil Wears Prada is one of my favorite bands, but
sure. Well, I don't even think I was allowed to listen to metalcore when my dad was a pastor, so
really,
who knows?
well, I just remember the metal side of you, which actually
Sure.
somewhat was inspirational. We'll dive into that later.
Sure.
But I didn't think we'd connect on this level. And we were discussing that if you, say, had passed away, let's say a tragic accident happened today, I would be really sad. I think part of that's lost opportunity. I think I'd like to get to know you more. You have a lot of interesting thoughts and beliefs that I want to learn from. And
sure.
two, I think in general, in humanity, if you connect with someone, you're going to give a fuck if they die.
Right.
Not saying I did. I cared when Grandma died, but it didn't have that level of, man, I lost a good friend. It had, man, it really sucks that my mom lost her mom.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a little part of me. First off, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like the little bit that you and I have connected since the breakup of the church, those small amounts of time where it's outside of family get-togethers where we feel like we can be open and honest about things and break the walls down. It's like, holy shit, we're very, very close in our mindsets and everything. I think that's great. So yeah, I agree completely. Like, even if it's like, we've spoken for 8 hours accumulatively over the last 8 years, but those 8 hours have been more impactful and more meaningful and more real and raw than any conversation I've ever had with my grandma, which is unfortunate. And there is a part of me that's like, I mean, I feel a little bit sad for the lost time. Like, what could have been, like, there were things at the funeral, like I said, that I learned about her that I never knew. It's like, I've been alive for 30 freaking years. You've been my grandma the whole time. I didn't know any of this shit. Why is that?
About grandma? Like, let's list the things we knew. Like, I knew she liked to swim at the YMCA.
Just because that was routine.
Yep. I knew she liked Mercer Market fried chicken. Like,
routine. Everything that we knew about them was just their routines. Church, Mercer Market, the Y, and church. Like, that was about it.
That Daily Bread.
Right.
Our article, then they watched the 700 Club.
Oh, dear God.
We can go into the roots of the 700 Club. That's interesting. But they had a routine, and that's all we knew about them. Grandpa opened up a little more than Grandma, I will say, in terms of his hobbies, like
sure,
woodcraft and
puzzles and shit like that.
Biking. I used to bike with Grandpa when they babysit me.
Really?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of a different side of him, but Grandma never hit that level. One time she made me root beer floats. That's about all I heard.
Yeah. And at like the funeral, they're talking about how like youth group events, they would have like these parties where everybody be over at their house and she'd be making food for them and everything. I was like, who is this person? It doesn't sound anything like you. Yeah. Doesn't sound like that. I mean, sure, maybe they flowered it up a little bit to make it sound more great than it was, but it's like,
where was that?
Where was that? What happened to that?
That's the first time I remember that now. That's the first time I ever heard that story.
Yeah, same. And it's like, we didn't hear it from our parents, let alone our grandparents. Like, what the hell?
Exactly. I'd be interested. Almost feel like the death of our uncle that I never met. Were you alive when Daniel was?
No.
I never met him and you never met him. I almost feel like that shut down the past of our family.
I don't know, but I do know that, I mean, you hear glimpses of his personality, and maybe he was smoking weed in the basement, maybe he was doing this and that. It's like, what are you hiding? Like, there's more to this. There's more humanity in this family than we're all leading on.
Exactly. He seems like a guy who I could smoke a blunt with and learn a lot from, but I never got that chance. Again, going back to my argument with Michael, I almost expected that level of down-to-earthness from him, based off of the brief glimpses into Uncle Danny's past. But
yeah,
it's interesting. to even think about. I'd like to ask my mother more at some point, just to kind of. But they're so shameful of sin that
right.
They believe even storytelling will taint the name of the small family.
It's honesty. Everybody knows that. Everybody, in the grand scheme of things, the spectrum of humanity is pretty small. Mm-hmm. You're somewhere on it. Nothing that you've done is really all that shocking, except for the fact that everybody else is hush-hush about it. Yeah. And you are too. So, like, if we're all... If you said, like, we had sex before marriage or we drank or something, it's like, okay, like, like, what's the problem?
If it is wrong, let's give the devil his due. Let's say drinking and sex before marriage and masturbation and lying, all wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
But
so is lying.
We're still, according to the Bible, sinful humans, and
right.
telling stories or empathizing with other people's faults, like,
and owning your own shit too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it seems like that's applauded quite a bit in the Bible.
Exactly. Well, King David, shit, all the things he did wrong.
Right. He killed a guy to take his wife.
Exactly. And they own up to that in the Bible. Why can't we own up to smoking a blunt? Like, Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Going back to, we talked about the Open Bible Church camp and stuff like that.
Oh, God.
I've heard some sinister stories. I didn't really experience.
I don't know if the cousins associated with this would want this told as I experienced it. But when I was there with some family members, I believe I mentioned this story to you.
You may have.
There was what was his name? Jeremy. There was a counselor who I blocked this out of my mind until about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. But he would literally walk around. It was me and two of my cousins and another individual. He'd walk around with his dick hanging out of his pants and tell us, this is what dudes do. And I was in 6th grade at the time. And I'm like, I had just started PE class and all this shit. And I'm like, that's when they introduced, it's okay to fucking change clothes around other people. So I didn't think anything of it.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, maybe that is what dudes do. And I specifically...
It's not. Spoiler alert, it's not.
It's not. But I specifically remember telling him, nah, I don't do that. And I remember all of my cousins and that other 6th grader saying, nah, we don't do that.
We're 6th graders, and we know that's not what dudes do.
Yeah.
Adult who's responsible for us.
What's really fucked up about that story, in hindsight, that dude may still be doing the same shit.
Or worse. That was like, 15 years ago? Yeah. Guessing it's probably escalated or he's in jail.
I hope so. My God, I hope so. And if I knew his last name or any way to track him down, I would make sure he wasn't doing that shit to anyone else.
Yeah. You'd send him dick pics and be like, dude, this is just what dudes do.
This is what dudes do. That's why God created Snapchat.
That's right.
But no, in all seriousness, like that, the fact that we weren't taught in the Open Bible Church to think that anyone associated with that company or that denomination could be misleading or wrong.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. I would think that a typical parent would have warned, say, that young 6-year-old Trent, 6th grade Trent at a young age, like, hey, if someone shows you their private parts, that's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
And none of us ever were told that. And that's wrong.
I was kind of told, well, all the sexuality stuff is so glossed over. It's just like,
because they're afraid to talk about it.
Right. And I struggle with that with my kids, but I force myself, and having Kayla as my wife helps a lot. But like, we are as blunt as we can possibly be.
You
like,
have all daughters, right?
No, we have a son and daughter.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, and we tell them straight up, this is called a penis and a vagina. There's not these fun words for them. It's this is this and this is that. If anybody else, talks about it, wants to do anything off color, like they know the lines and they know that they're called privates for a reason. And like we're very, very open and blunt with them because they're going to grow up and be humans. Like why would one? They're going to have to figure it out at some point. So making it a normal thing from childhood just seems like the smartest way to do it.
Exactly. What I was going to say, wouldn't you rather your kids understand that they shouldn't be seeing other people's genitals and also not be showing other people their genitals?
Right.
I remember specifically my mother telling me before, I learned all about sex from school, my friends, and the internet.
Really? Did you never have any of the talk?
Not a single talk. I remember my mother.
We had a brief talk, but that's about it.
I remember asking my mother about if we should have had a talk.
It's a little late now. Do you want to have it now, Mom?
Your mind's going to be blown by this. When she was a kid, her parents just gave her a book to read. So,
what kind of book?
It probably wasn't the Bible, but it was a book about sex. I'm sure it was written by some open Bible or closely related denomination.
Yep. So they didn't explain it to her. They're just like, here's a book. Bye.
Yes. So I would imagine your parent, Craig, probably had this similar.
He went through a book with us. Or with me. It wasn't like a family outing, but he went through a book with me. And I think there was talk of like, maybe there's a second book or something, but I was always like, no, I'm good. That was awkward enough. Like it was, that was about it. I learned a lot more from school, and
So what was your talk like? Because I never had one.
My talk with him?
Yeah.
It was very, it was very matter of fact, which is how it should be. And it was like, this is this, God made us this way, and this is going to happen to your body, and this is how seed implants egg, and blah, blah, blah. Like it was fine, but it was at a young enough age, and it wasn't left open for discussion or dialogue in the future. Yeah. Like with our kids, we're being like, we have some books, but we haven't really gone through it that much. It's just like, if the kids have questions, they know they can ask us anything. And very recently, our son came up to us. He's 7 now, and he's like, so he knew that sperm goes into the egg, and then a baby is made. He came up and he's like, so how does the sperm get into the woman to implant the egg? And we're like, well, you know how your dick gets hard sometimes? Well, penis gets hard sometimes. We just are very matter of fact about it. It's like, it's not weird to him. It's weird. The whole concept is foreign as shit. It's like very strange. But if there's any time that it's going to be less strange, it's now, before he is like questioning all these things and not having answers. So we're just like, this is what it is. Okay, there's that. When you have another question, let us know. And it's just a progression.
That's how it should be. I remember thinking back to the South Park episode where Cartman thinks you pee inside of a woman. And the worst part about that is that I had that same conversation with my friends and my neighbor, because none of us were educated properly on what the fuck happens.
Right, and that's all the more reason to teach your kid, because otherwise they're learning from other stupid, shitty kids who
you think that they're peeing inside of a fucking woman's butt.
Exactly. It's like they're going to have these conversations very frankly and very matter-of-factly with somebody, and that's going to influence them for the rest of their lives. Who's it going to be from? Like, why not just do it?
Or the neighbor, or some fucking creep from the Open Bible Church campus.
It's true. Anyway, going back to the camp, the reason why I brought that up, which diverted into this really creepy rabbit trail, but you were talking about our Uncle Danny, who I was named after. I have several vivid memories of that camp, and looking back on it, I think that it was creepier than I thought that it was at the time, because that's what we were raised in.
Yeah.
But I remember vividly, every single time there was a chapel sermon or whatever, there was always the altar call and the come up and feel obligated to feel a certain way and think a certain thing and speak in tongues and all this stuff. And if you don't, you're fine, but to focus on these people who are, you know, feeling that. And I'm not a very emotional person by any stretch. So feeling anything is like, I mean, it feels like you're having to force it sometimes because you're guilted into you're supposed to be feeling this way. And if you're not feeling that way, then you might be wrong. And if you're wrong, then maybe you're going to hell. Who knows? But yeah, I remember one time vividly in my mind when I was probably like 10 or 12 or something. And this guy's praying for me, and he's another counselor or something. He did not have his dick out, but he was another counselor.
Well, that's good.
That's a start. But he's like, I mean, it's like super loud. Everybody's praying and everything. He's like being very passionate. He's like, "What's your name, man? What's your name?" And I'm like, "My name's Daniel." And he's like, "You know why you're named that? You know why you're named that? It's because Daniel was a strong man after God's own heart in the Bible, blah, blah, blah." And the whole time in my mind, and I wasn't like questioning the faith or anything at the time, but the whole time in my mind, I'm like, I was named after my uncle. What are you talking about? It's like, you don't know me. You don't know who my parents are. My parents could be atheists and never read the Bible. That's not why. I mean, that's probably part of why I'm named that, but screw you for jumping to assumptions and then making it this big, grand, God cares about you thing. It's like, shut up, dude.
Everything's a grand narrative with Christianity. Like, everything about you either has to be this beautiful connection. And I'm not shitting on Christianity. Like, again,
it's fine.
There's some great parts to it, but
sure.
The grand narrative side of it, where everything has to happen, and it almost feels like Star Wars Episode 1 through 3. Like, why are you diving into this shit just so it gets to 4, 5, and 6? Like,
right. Right.
Like, I'm just named fucking Daniel for a goddamn reason. My uncle.
I get it. I mean, everything's so sensationalized too that it's like everything has to have a point. It was tiring, like going through life that way. And then I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you and getting your story, but whatever. When I hooked up with Kayla, who is like Southern Baptist, they're like, you know, once saved, always saved, which is heresy to us because we knew everything. But they were like, well, you know, I mean, they used a lot of anecdotal evidence and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just interesting because like we met for like, I met her dad for like the second time ever. And he's like, so sit down. I hear your dad's a pastor and you guys think that, you know, if you sin, you go to hell, or if you sin and you die, you go to hell. Explain that. I'm like, dude, I'm like freaking 16 years old. And I'm like, yeah, like there's this thing where it's like we know what we know because we know it and because we were told it.
For 16 years.
Right. I've never had a reason to challenge it. I've never heard another argument. So yeah, that's what I believe. Mm-hmm. And they bring up like anecdotal evidence of, oh, my friend died and she wasn't whatever. She was saved at one point and then she was living this chaotic life, and so do you think that she's in hell? Like, I'm not gonna tell you your friend's in hell.
What kind of question is that for a fucking 16?
Right. And her dad would ask me stuff like, well, if you guys get married, what are you gonna teach your kids? It's like, we just started dating, dude. Pump the brakes a little bit.
Pregnant, I swear.
It's like that we haven't even discussed that between us, let alone, you know, discussing what we're going to teach our hypothetical children. But it's like, we'll probably teach them whatever we think at the time, just like you guys did. So chill out. But yeah, it's just, I mean, the Christianity thing, just looking at the spats between different denominations, even like, we're not talking about Judaism versus Christianity versus
not even Catholic
Muslim
versus Protestant. Like,
right.
Because that's a big thing. I thought Catholics growing up were like a completely different religion.
Yeah, I did too.
And then you learn obviously later that it was just a split between Lutheran and Catholics. But again, even Lutheran, I thought they were some far off religion. And it was basically Protestant versus Baptist. And
yeah, I remember somebody asking me in like junior high or something, they're like, so you're a Christian, what denomination are you? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess we're non-denominational. I mean, we weren't really taught the differences between any of these things. We were taught we're right, they're wrong. That's it.
I was taught that Catholics pray to Mary,
mm-hmm.
and that everything else was Christian besides Lutheran. Because I remember remember Notables and Generation?
Of course, yeah.
The show choir that we both joined at one point in our high school careers.
Yes. Are you talking about the public school thing, or are you talking about the competition thing in the Open Bible Church?
I was talking about the public school.
Okay, yeah.
I went and sang at a Lutheran church. And I remember that being the first time where I'm like...
John Schweppy's dad. You're frozen.
Yes.
Okay.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're frozen too. Back. But I remember specifically at that point in my life thinking, what the hell's a Lutheran?
Yeah.
And I went to my mother and I asked her, and she's like, well, it's kind of a Catholic. And I'm like, what do you mean it's kind of a Catholic?
What's a Catholic?
Exactly. And she dove into what a Catholic was, and that they apparently believe in. Her definition of it was they pray to Mary. That's what
it's an easy go-to.
Always says is Catholics pray to Mary, and then
they pray to Mary. They say Hail Marys, and they confess to a human.
Wine.
Oh gosh. Oh dear. As we're both doing right now.
Yep, exactly.
Happy communion.
I need to refill.
Cheers.
But all that being said, I remember that being the first time I really thought about denomination. And that kind of bugged me for about 3 or 4 years until I finally started reading history, and especially Roman history with the rise of the Catholic Church. And I think that partially helped me come to the conclusion of Gnosticism, atheism at that time.
Yeah. If you trace things back, it gets a little hairy, and we don't like to talk about that too much.
As a fellow libertarian, when you see government really step into the religious side, you start to ask a lot of questions that shouldn't be asked.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing is strange. We could vent about it forever. We've talked way longer than anybody wants to listen to, and we could do another episode for sure in the near future and catch up some more. But
we can talk about Star Wars at some point.
Absolutely. I actually kind of planned on, if there wasn't another bonus conversation that came up, I was like, let's just dork out about Star Wars or something for a couple minutes. But it was good talking to you. And what?
Is that a Solo poster on your wall?
There's a Solo poster, a Rogue One poster. I've got an R2-D2 on my arm. All sorts of fun stuff.
That Solo and Rogue One are the two best Star Wars.
I'm gonna hold off on my response to that. If you want to hear the continuation of this conversation, please check out the bonus episode by going to patreon.com/The System Is Down and signing up for as little as a cup of coffee a month. But Trent or whatever the fuck your name is, I gotta say, why don't we touch on this for a little bit? Because you said we'll get back to this, but you saw me as the metal guy, the Christian metal guy for a while. And I have a point to make on that, but before I make my point on that, I'm curious as to how you, what your perception was of me, because we were all perceiving each other through our parents' lenses and what was interpreted for us.
Fun fact, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole a little bit for this. My first experience with metal was you. So
here.
And metal is amazing.
Okay. What was your first experience?
So it was that concert at the Open Bible Church.
Yeah, I don't like to speak about that. That never happened, and that was not metal. But please continue.
But it opened my eyes, and then I went to Cornerstone with my mother.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Wow.
It was awkward. But all that being aside, I actually started listening to my high school metal bands were Judas Priest, Megadeth, and Black Sabbath. Very light, light metal.
Heathen.
Yes, right. Very, old school, chill.
Yeah.
Lack of a better word, metal.
Sorry, old folks. It's pretty chill by today's standards. But did your parents, like, did they approve of you listening to that stuff, or were they against it?
Oh, they approved as long as there was Christian values, but I started to stray from that, especially with Judas Priest, like their lead singer is gay.
What were the Christian values of Black Sabbath?
Are you frozen?
I am frozen. What were the Christian values of Black Sabbath?
None. So,
I mean, they had a cross, maybe an upside down cross on some things, and that's how a lot of the disciples were executed. That
opened the door to me, to them being someone okay with heavier music, and I snuck in those secular kind of bands.
Gotcha. So you started with Christian metal and then got into older stuff.
I can't name a single Christian metal band that I listened to back in when you were singing at the Open Bible Church.
Shut up.
but it opened the door to me to new genres of music.
Yeah.
And I actually became really good friends with Michael Kelly and Michael Hanna. And they were big metalheads, and they kind of helped me open that door. Now, in college, I really dove into, I don't know if you've heard of them, but Between the Buried and Me, Tesseract, just all sorts of more new age metal. And then the past few years, Veil of Maya, Devil Wears Prada, more metalcore, deathcore.
Devil Wears Prada. They're going to bring you back around, man.
They're
super Christian. They're super Christian. They're very, very, very much a witnessing tool. I'm glad that you're latching on to them.
Yes. Though half their albums are not even remotely
right. They have an album about zombies, an album about aliens, but it's all Christian.
We don't tell our parents about the zombie EP.
That's right.
But no, just I remember you specifically, you and really Cole Elliott, your wife's brother, specifically, the heavier side of metal. Me kind of.
The listeners are very familiar with Cole.
Yep, fair enough. He kind of put in an eye towards it because I don't know, I saw it as kind of raunchy, rebellious, even though I don't see it that way now. But it was attractive to me, and to that I kind of attribute the two of you, aside from Michael Kelly, Michael Hanna, Stephen McCorder, all those individuals for showing me specific bands. You guys kind of opened my eyes to the genre. So
I could be to blame for your backsliding, right?
Yeah, heathenness, really. I remember there was two things I always looked for in you, and it was metal and Star Wars. So hate to say it, but I bought a PlayStation 2 for Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I still play video games all the time. So you're partially to blame.
Glad to hear that I influenced another family member out of. I don't know. I don't even know where to go with that. It definitely makes me. I mean, you never know what kind of influence you have on people. Like, we never talked about this step before. Now, we've never had this conversation, and especially now, like, I've had this podcast going for a year and a half, and I mean, you look at like our grandmother's funeral, it's like, good on you guys for keeping the faith, and you've got a joy that I don't understand right now. And that's fine, whatever. But I mean, it's strange. Like, you look at the web of your life, and it's like, who am I influencing without even realizing it? It's bizarre, especially now when I'm like, I don't know. And maybe I don't want that to lead somebody out of their faith or anything. I don't want to be somebody else's problem, but I mean, if I do, then your faith wasn't strong enough to begin with, and you need to probably look into that a little bit and dissect some of it. But it's interesting.
No, to keep the record clear, it wasn't in terms of faith. Like, that was on my own.
Right.
Like, I looked at you towards a hobby, like,
sure,
metal is fucking cool, and you were the first metal exposure I ever had. I remember.
That is so sad. I don't even want to hear that.
Really fucking sad.
If it was like later on in my life and you're like, I went to a non-retreat show or something, I'd be like, okay, not great, but fine. But I don't even want to talk about that show.
I think it wasn't necessarily the musical. It wasn't necessarily the musical ability, because I already knew you had that. Honestly, because you were a good singer. I've heard you sing a billion times in my life. It was just the idea that it was okay to listen to a different genre.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a big discussion that I could get into. I've told it way too many times on the podcast, so I don't want to dig into it, but me kind of forcing my parents out of that box and getting, I mean, they'll deny it to their death, but I got Craig into some of the heavier stuff. I got Cole into some of the heavier stuff. So it all trickles out, and, you know, just people seeing that it's fine.
Prodigy.
What's that?
You can add me to the list of your prodigies too.
All right. You mean proteges?
Yes, sorry.
I'm talking pretty highly of yourself, calling yourself a prodigy, but whatever. You can add me to the list of your very smart people that you've influenced. All right. Well, I mean, if there's a place to wrap it up, that's got to be it, because we've gone on for way too long. And we'll talk some more because we're drinking, we're having a good time, and I enjoy it very, very much. But Trent, whatever that means, thank you so much for being here. Normally I would ask, do you have anything to plug or promote or anything like that? Anything that's going on in your life? I don't know. Do you?
I
check out Target.com.
I work at Target. They pay me well, so I might as well promote them. Go buy fucking sweaters and shit. Whatever the hell they sell. I haven't given them $1, but
yeah,
you
should do it to make up for my insolence.
Yep.
Well, man, it's been great talking to you, and I really enjoy it and appreciate it. We need to do it more off the record, and we need to do it more regularly. And I would happily have you on for regular conversations here, just to, you know, break down life and where we're at and stuff like that. Because I think that we started in similar places. We went down different paths that weren't really that different. We've ended up in places that we assumed were different, and we're basically the same. But, you know, it's been fun. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for being here.
Look forward to a Star Wars podcast and a politics podcast.
The last time I guaranteed that we were going to do 2 bonus episodes after, I drank too much, and I ended up not releasing the second one. Everybody was pissed off about it. So no guarantees, but probably a libertarian and a Star Wars podcast.
I will promise you that we will drink and we will talk, and whether you guys get to hear it,
there you go.
It's up to the fate of the universe.
All right. Well, thanks, man. It's been fun.
It has.
Hey, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed the conclusion of my conversation with Trenton Campbell as much as I did. And I did. I enjoyed it very, very much. And, you know, it's strange. It's hard to have conversations like this because you just think about the time that's been wasted. I mean, I'm not a super personable guy. I don't go out and, you know, make a whole lot of friends. I'm quite an introvert, and I'm okay with that. I don't leave my house all that often, even, except for via the podcast. But it's kind of a shame when you find out that you had a lot more in common with somebody who's closely related to you, and you never knew that before age 30. You think about all the years and all the things that could have been. It's never too late, though. It's never too late to start having the conversations. It's never too late to be civil and open and honest and raw and find out, you know, if you got all that stuff in common, if they are somebody that you'd want to chat for 3 hours with, which is what happened. We ended up chatting for 3 hours, and it was great. So I would encourage you guys this week to, you know, it's the holiday season. Reach out to a family member that you haven't spoken to in a long time and just have a drink with them. Just get together. I know it's weird. It is. But what do you have to lose? I mean, you can only possibly gain from it. Unless they're like a blood-sucking evil relative, come to find out, and they shorten your life by a few years. But most likely, you're only gonna benefit, if anything. So that's my challenge for you this week. Also, please go like, share, and subscribe to the show on Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, YouTube, all the things. Subscribe, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it. You know what to do. Just go click the buttons. It's not hard to do. And I appreciate it when you do. So do it. Do it and help the show grow. And if you would like to be a member of the Downers Club and help the show grow in a major way, you can go throw some money at it at patreon.com/The System Is Down and sign up for next to nothing. $5 a month. That's all that's required to get weekly bonus audio and video content, multiple episodes. So patreon.com/The System Is Down. Whole bunch of perks over there too for signing up for that. So go check it out. And I'd appreciate it greatly. Okay. Well, I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you guys, as always, for listening to the show and for continuing to share it with people. We're steadily growing. I mean, this time of year, there's a lot of fluctuations, and some episodes that I expect to do poorly, do well, and ones that I expect to do well, do less well. So it's really an unpredictable time of year as people are, bustling around, doing the holiday shuffle, buying things, wasting money, visiting relatives and such. But I appreciate you guys all. The numbers they are at this point staying steady, which is great. So please continue to tell one or two people this week about the show. It's an easy thing to do. Just share it on Facebook even. Share it on your wall if you're not embarrassed and ashamed that you listen to it. Share it on your wall. You don't even have to talk to somebody in person. I know it's a difficult thing for people to do here in 2018, and hopefully 2018 is different. Hopefully, we can continue to change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time, which means getting face to face and owning your shit. Knowing what you believe and knowing that the person that you disagree with is not your enemy. Listening to them if you want them to listen to you. Hearing them out. Knowing that they have more information on certain topics than you do, and you have more information on certain topics than they do. So let's all figure this out together. And of course, if you guys will have me, I will be back here, nestled safely in your ears like a hibernating bear in December, with some more uncomfortable conversations for you. Until then, thanks guys. Question everything. Stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.